What if you could live your life judgment-free? Are you ready to live the unapologetic, confident life that God designed for you? If you are, then this is the place to be. Welcome to the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. It's time to break free of physical, spiritual, and heart-centered challenges that have held you back for way too long. Listen in for powerful tips and tools to help you break free today. Hear from leading experts, along with me, Annie Berryhill, your host and personal guide to freedom. Now it's time to live like no one's judging. Let's go. Hey there, welcome to the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. This is Annie Berryhill, and I'd like to welcome you here and just let you know that we have a really fun time ahead for you. And I have a super special guest. You know me, I always have super special guests that I'm really excited to share with you. And today is no different. And I wish you could see us. We are so color coordinated with my brand. It's super funny. But today I have my new friend and a woman who I have actually admired from afar from reading her books and stuff like that, is Shae Bynes. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, but first off, hi Shae.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's so great to have you here. Are you doing good?
I'm doing fantastic. The sun is shining and I'm addicted to sun, so it's all good.
Oh, me too. But let me tell everybody a little bit about you before we get started, because you have such great stuff to share and I know people just need to be infused with it. So Shae, my friend, is a passionate storyteller, teacher, and mentor, and she's on a mission to help people experience God's best in their business and their family lives. She is the founder and chief fire igniter of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, an organization that inspires, teaches, and mentors Christian entrepreneurs to partner with God and have a greater kingdom impact through the work they do in the marketplace. Alongside her husband and high school sweetheart, Phil, Shae also teaches and speaks to couples about how to practically apply kingdom principles to married life. She admits a healthy addiction to water and sunshine and enjoys life in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with her husband and 3 beautiful daughters. So Shae, again, I love hearing about all that you're doing. Kingdom entrepreneurs really get me fired up too, because I'm right in that space with you. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yes, so good. So one of the way that I found you, and I'll let the people that are listening know, is I read, I think is your most recent book called Grace Over Grind.
Yes.
That's the most recent book. And a friend, another guest on the show, actually, Dr. Jen Bennett, had posted that she was reading it. And of course, it seemed like a very timely title. And so I went ahead and got it and I loved it. I've actually read it a couple times and I just glean something great every single time. It just I don't know, just wipes away some of the confusion in the world and just makes things really clear about how God has set up how we operate in the world. So I actually want to spend some time talking today about the practicality of living a life of grace and not in the grind.
Sounds good. One of my favorite topics.
All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for that whole topic, and then we'll get into some more of the practical stuff.
Sure. I had stages of inspiration for this topic. So I come from the background. I've been an entrepreneur for, I think I stopped counting the years. So I think around 15 years or somewhere around there. And I came up in the hustle, like everyone I listened to about business, it was like hustle hard, we make things happen and we grind it out. And so I came from that background, and I'm also I was very achievement oriented. And so that's just how I went. It was like, let's plow it, let's bang down the doors. And that's how I built in business. That was my way of going. And I remember when I made a transition and I made a shift and really invited the Lord into things that I was doing in business, I remember still having remnants of that left over. And I remember when the Lord asked me, I quit my job. Like the Lord gave me a very specific instruction to quit my job. And when I quit my job, I went into hustle mode again, because I was like, oh, you put me out here, God. Like I was obedient and I left, but now I've got to take back the reins. And I did what I'd call 6 months. I call it my 6 months of faithless action. And I remember that's like when you're taking all this action, you're doing everything you possibly can, but you're not doing anything in faith. You're just trying to do it all on your own and in your own strength. And I did that for 6 months, and I'll never forget. it's just one day it was like, are you done yet? Like I heard the Lord say, are you done yet? And I was like, yeah, I think I am. Because I was like making itty bitty progress. And I knew what I was doing. I was just doing more of what I did when I was working full time and doing business on the side. And so I was doing more of it and I had a lot more time to do it. But I'm telling you, it was like God was putting his hand on my progress because he wanted to get my attention. And he simply said, are you done yet? And then he started to show me another way. And so I had to live that out for a decent amount of time. And he would just take me from layer upon layer of living things out, showing me more of what it looks like to work in his grace. And then started to speak to me about writing a book. So I had to live it out for quite some time, layer upon layer. And then I started writing the book. And to be honest with you, it wasn't published until I gave birth to my third child last year. Completely supernatural childbirth, because God told me to stop writing the book because there was something about my pregnancy that needed to go in the book. And so after I had the baby, it was complete. That's a whole other story, but I had a completely supernatural childbirth experience. No pain, no medication, no nothing.
Wow.
If you want to go there, we can go there. But after I had that experience, God made a connection point to me about what happened, what he showed me through that labor and that childbirth experience, and what that has to do with a life of an entrepreneur, really anybody, and living by his grace. And then I could finish the book. So it went through stages over multiple years of time.
Wow. That is super amazing. And I know you talked about a few of those things, not really the writing of the book, but similar, that history. And so it's such an amazing story. And I love that, like, are you done yet? You could just see him like kind of kick him back in a chair. And he's like, dude, are you done?
Right.
I mean, I got all this waiting for you. And do you want it? Or do you just
want it, or you want to keep doing it like this? Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's so typical of people who, when we know how to do things and we've been successful at doing things a certain way, we like you said, you exactly took what you knew and applied it in a new situation. And it didn't work necessarily any better. I mean, you were productive or busy. I guess that's the grind.
I was certainly busy. Yeah.
Looking busy. And yet you weren't really getting the things that God had put in your heart to leave your job to do. Right?
Yeah. At the time I was doing real estate investing and I was doing affiliate marketing online. I was doing both of those things. And so it's just, that was my transition out. But then I assumed when God called me out that it was, I didn't even ask him why. I just kept doing what I was doing and just doing it harder.
Right. And that's so much like the trap of self. We are so capable. And I remember I grew up Catholic. So, and this is not anything to say about Catholicism, but anyone who knows Catholics or grew up Catholic will understand that we grow up with this idea. And I've talked to so many people who have this idea, like, I'm not going to bother God. This is just little. I'll take care of it. Right. And it's such a flip in your head to understand that, like, he actually wants us to give the littlest and the biggest things, not just the things we can't handle or we don't want to handle, but the things we're totally capable of handling, but he wants to have his hand on them. And it feels, to me, it's not just about my ego or my feeling good about myself. It's that I've already proven myself capable and I don't want to bother him. It's, it's the guilt. It's like the Catholic guilt thing.
He has the whole world in his hands.
He has much bigger problems than mine. But it's the commitment of in the practice of just giving it back over to him in the smallest and the largest. So it's kind of fits in with what you're saying, I think.
Yes, absolutely. When you realize, and to be honest, I didn't really get a revelation of that. And I wasn't able to really surrender things to him until I got revelation of his love. And so it took that. I grew up in the church, I've been in church as long as I can remember, since I was born. They probably had me at the hospital and we went to church next Sunday. I've been in the church forever. Yeah. But it wasn't until I was, mid-30s or young 30s or somewhere in there where I had these crazy encounters with God. And I really had to get a revelation of who he is truly and who I am in him. And it took a process of that before I could really say, you know what, I surrender all of this stuff to you because clearly you have my best in mind. You've got this all, we can do this together. Like, I'm not going to take control over everything, every aspect of my life anymore.
Well, I think it goes back to this place of a deepening relationship that also builds trust.
Yes.
So we have this image of God that we learn growing up, and he's kind of distant and big and sitting in heaven in this big, vast place of endless boundaries. And he's just removed, but he's there, but he's removed.
Yes.
And we hear about what he does for people, and we hear about these things we read in the Bible, and other people happen to other people, and we're like, well, that's good for you, but I mean, I'm really pretty horrid, and if he really knew what I was thinking or doing or whatever, that he wouldn't be that guy for me. And I think that's a lot of why I actually do this show, because the huge part of like being bold and brave is surrendering, and being sassy is walking in to what he's already created for you. And just all those three things can coexist.
That's right.
But it's not until you get to that place of accepting how much eternally you are unconditionally loved.
Yep.
That you can actually have the trust to surrender to him. And so it's not like a demand on his part. He's a gentleman. He would never do that to you.
Yes.
But it's that trust he waits for us to build in ourselves to be able to say, okay, now I'm ready. Here you go. Can
I share a story with you related to that?
Of course.
So when I said that I had these multiple experiences with God, this happened a number of years ago, but it was before Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur started. Okay. And I was at this women's conference, and it was the last night of the women's conference, and the pastor was talking about how, God gives us eyes to see things the way he sees them, and ears to hear, all that. And so she had asked us to sit down and she was going to pray over us. So we sit down, she prays, and she said, if God showed you something, stand up. So people were standing, I guess my eyes were closed. And she asked if people heard anything, if like God spoke something to you, stand up. And I didn't hear or see anything. And I was actually feeling kind of agitated about it, because I'm like, what am I, chopped liver? These people are standing up, and like, you're not telling me or showing me anything. And I know there's more to you. And so she stops praying. We get up, and she's sharing her closing words. And in the middle of whatever words she was sharing, I don't even remember them anymore, I fell down, like out of nowhere. Wow. And my nose was on top of the woman I came with, the friend I came with, her high heel shoe. My nose was on her shoe, and I could not move. And I'm trying desperately to get up, and I can't move. And I know that this is God. I just knew it was God, but I was just like, really? And I'm talking to her shoe, and I'm like, why am I on this floor? Get me off this floor. These people are going to call 911. They're going to think I have a medical emergency, and I need to get up. Couldn't move a lick, not at all. And so finally I was just like, you know what, God, what? Like what? I'm here, clearly. What is it? And when I said, okay, what is it? I had the first open vision I'd ever had. And I was on a playground playing the trust fall game, where someone stands behind you and you fall backwards and they catch you. And so in the game, I went back. I did fall back, but at the last second, I put my arm back to brace myself for a fall. And I heard, that's what you do to me. And it was just complete silence. And I didn't feel condemned, but it was conviction, loving conviction. And I just kind of sat there stunned. And I heard, do you want to know why you do that? I'm like, yeah, I do want to know why I do that. And he said, because you have absolutely no idea how much I love you. And then I was able to get up off the floor. And then for the next night and for the next 2 weeks, I had the most ridiculous supernatural encounters with God that I had never experienced before in my entire life. And every time he'd be like, you see how much I love you? And he'd show me something, say, you see how much I love you? And it took all of that for me. He knows how to work with his kids. It took all of that for me to be able to say, you know what? I surrender it all. And all that had to take place before I could ever walk into what he asked me to do with Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. There was no way I could have done it without having a revelation of that. But it took all of that for me.
It sounds like he took that time to basically reset you. He reboot you.
Just like, I'm going to put you on the floor and you're not going to be able to move. And I'm going to get this message to you, honey.
Because you need to just be still and hear what I have to say. And I'm going to make you be still.
Yeah, you're going to be still. You're going to be still. Yes. And I was still. I couldn't move a lick.
That's crazy.
It's so funny. Every time I tell the story, it's almost like, that's such a wild story, but it happened. It's like, that's what happened to me.
I believe you. I had one time that it's a similar story. It's a similar vein, not the same thing. I wasn't on my face, on someone's shoe, but I was driving, and I was, driving is a very lucid thought time because you're kind of preoccupied with something driving, but you're not totally concentrating on it.
Right.
So, the shower, when you take walks, like when you're kind of doing something with your body that's automatic, your mind can actually just do whatever.
Yes.
And I think that's also a time that, God talks to me in the car all the time when I'm by myself. I kind of turned off the radio and go like, okay, I'm ready. What's you got? And so this one time I was driving. Now my given name is Anne. Anne.
Right.
And I grew up as Annie, and because it looks like Annie, and then my middle initial is E. But essentially my name is Anne. And I was driving along this one day and I heard him say, literally, I couldn't have thought this because it just came into my head too fast. And I heard him say, your name means grace, like that. Your name means grace, And I was like, yeah, I know. Like, I'm just talking to him. Like, yeah, I know. And he goes, but do you know what that means? And I said, unmerited favor. And he said, so since the day you were born, you have had unmerited favor. And I was like, whoa. Even now I just got like the chilly bumps.
Yes.
What? Yeah, I never looked at it like that. You're right. Like, why are you working so hard to, create or make something instead of just going in the flow of my unmerited favor?
Yes.
Since you were born.
Yes.
And, yes, of course, that's an earthly name that my parents gave me. But I think it's so interesting that means that I've been striving to be noticed, or, if you've listened to any other, episodes of the show, I talk a little bit about my background, and it was a little rough at times, and I was mouthy and I got in trouble a lot. And so I did question if I was loved. And so for him to say that to me was just another layer of saying, not only do I love you, but I gave you good things, even though you never earned them.
That's right.
So it's that same sort of vein of like, and I go, oh, hey, that's pretty powerful. I'll remember that,
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I mean, that's his love, and he'll speak to us exactly the way he needs to, whatever he needs to do to get our attention.
Exactly. So that's a good segue into this. Now we're set up to know that we're loved, but let's take it back a little bit and talk to the person who is struggling in that straddle of wanting to let go, wanting to trust him, wanting to walk in that grace and let go of the human doing and become that human being he designed us to be, right? Like tell us some things about how that process could work, or more practical application.
Yeah, absolutely. So I talk to business owners a lot, because that's kingdom driven entrepreneur, but really what I'm about to say really applies to anybody and the things that you do, or, whatever. So when I'm talking to business people, I typically talk about how, so God's interested in everything that concerns you and everything that you do. Right. And so if you when I say partner with God, invite God into your work, then that looks like basically if someone had, as opposed to saying, hey, here's all my plans, God, will you bless these plans? That means that I'm going to be prayerful. I'm going to pray about, I'm going to say, God, I want to do this with you, whatever it is in life. If it's parenting your children, if it, whatever it is. Now, I want to do this with you. I want to know what's on your heart concerning this business, or I want to know what's on your heart concerning my children, or your heart, even concerning this job that I have, whatever it is that you're doing, right? I want to know your heart concerning the people that are around me. I want to know your heart for me and what I'm doing. Give me wisdom, give me insight, give me strategy, right?
Right.
And when you invite him in that, he delivers, right? And so oftentimes, now everyone has their own rhythm, and how they kind of flow with God. But for some people, it just might be that, and it's like they give the first fruits of their day to him, right? That's like, so they might be with a journal, they might be worship music in a journal and Jesus, that might be some people's thing. Other people, it might just be, hey, I go for an early morning walk and I'm just like, I'm having a chat with God while I'm out in nature, or, whatever. Everyone has their different thing. But the idea is that you actually make the shift really in your mind and in your heart that I want him involved in everything. And I know he desires to be involved in everything. And so I'm going to open myself up to what he has to say to me, course corrections while I'm moving, what he has to give me even up front, all of those things. Because as soon as we say, I want God's blueprint concerning anything, right? As soon as we invite him and say, we want your blueprint, that means we experience his best, as opposed to coming up with all of our own stuff and then saying, hey, God, bless this plan in Jesus' name. Right.
Right. Right. I get it. And I get the picture, and I had this, I tend to get understandings in visionary things. Like I can see things and it becomes like an analogy. And I remember having to make a decision at one point in my life where what I saw was myself hanging on a trapeze and I was swinging from side to side. And I had to make that decision to let go of the known and grab onto the other handle of the unknown. But I also had to spend a split second, a second, however amount of time in the no man zone of, I hope there's a net. I hope I grab onto the next one. I hope that there's a net. And I remember saying to my husband, it just sounds so scary. And he goes, but that's where the fun is.
Yes.
And I think, right, it's the adventure. And I think sometimes when we're not quite to that trust level in knowing that God's going to catch us, and even if he doesn't catch us, that there's another thing he's going to do with it that is also good out of his love, right? If it doesn't exactly work out the way that we expect.
Because we'll say that he didn't catch me, but it didn't mean that he didn't catch you. He didn't catch you the way you thought he was going to catch you.
Exactly.
Right. And so just learning to walk that out. And I find that it's like, there's ways of walking this out without feeling like, you've got to leap off a bridge all the time. I mean, sometimes it's just surrendering little small things in the beginning, just so you can get, you can start small, right? It doesn't have to be like, I've surrendered everything, or I have this huge, it's some people are like, I only bring God in huge decisions. Okay. Practice bringing him in a small one.
Exactly.
Right. Some people are like, I don't bring him in anything. Okay, well, bring him into something, right? I mean, it's just you start where you start and you just walk it out. And I find that the more you walk it out, the more you realize that, wow, this is the way I desire to do life, right? Just in a rhythm and a flow with him, right? As opposed to just trying to make things happen, force the doors open, in everything in life, just grinding it out, right? And when you start to get a taste of that, you start to realize, actually, I kind of like this, right? And then you start to surrender more and more, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a process that it's just one of those things where God meets you where you are, and just if that's your heart, then you start where you start and grow from there.
That's excellent. It's an excellent point, because we can't really take those huge jumps like we want to, because once we figure out where we want to be, at least from our knowledge standpoint, we want to hurry up and get there. It's like learning a trade. I just read a quote today that said, at first they pay you for what you do, and later they pay you for what you know. Right. Right. So we can't just go from doing to knowing. We have to earn it. We have to learn it, right? So we can be the know that teaches the next people that get paid to do. Right. Yeah. It's a process. It's a process. And I think too, for me, because I see things so much in a line or like a path. I always see things in paths or timelines or structure. I have to see that. And for me, it gets very frustrating and scary if I can't see 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 steps ahead of me. But one of the other things that, he showed me a while back that I really hold on to were actually 2 similar things. And one of them is that really he only lights up the path just in front of your feet. It's just so you won't trip imminently. And you might trip because you might veer off the path or try to run in the dark or whatever. I mean, it may happen, and it's not a given. And then the other time I saw that we're walking down a dark path, but he's like giving me a piggyback ride. Yeah. And so I don't have to worry because he knows the path, and he doesn't even need the light because he knows the path so well. Yes, because he is the light. He is the light. And both of those things bring a lot of comfort to me when I want to run ahead and just say, the final thought that I was thinking as you were saying all those things, the last part is, I would much rather have the creativity of the creator of the universe solving my problems or building my business or whatever thing it is that I'm struggling with than little old brained me. I'm not that vast. I don't have that many resources. He does. Like, we're talking about an infinite God, right? With infinite everything, right? Exactly. So why would we not want to tap into his wisdom, his everything, his strategies, everything in every area of our lives, right? Right. Exactly. That's my point. We have access to so much goodness and vision and places to go. And I think that's exciting when you can cross over the bridge essentially into trust. Yes. Then it becomes really just the adventure, the wild ride of like, where's God going to take me today? Yes. That's so funny you use that language. I always talk about my wild and crazy and amazing adventure with God. I mean, that's when I made the shift, that's exactly
what it felt like and feels like today. And my prayer is for the rest of my life.
Exactly. It keeps you really, I think it keeps you in this perpetual anticipation of good.
Yes.
It's going to be an adventure.
Childlike faith, right? And faith like a child. I mean, that's what he says. You see the kingdom of God when you have the faith like a child. So we should be able to walk through life with a childlike expectation. That's why it's such a blessing to actually be, I'm a mother of 3 kids, one's 17, one is 10, and one is 14 months. And I was a different parent at each of, when they were babies at each of those
Exactly.
kids. And it's such a blessing now to look at life through the eyes of my littlest one and see, it's like getting a sense of what it looks like to have childlike faith, childlike expectation. It's like I have that every day in my house, right? And it's such a completely different experience, but that's how God desires us for us to be with him, right?
Exactly. And I will say that when I spend time with him, I find that I am in that place of very, very simple, pure.
Yes.
When you're a child, you never think about if someone is going to take care of you. You just are taken care of because you are a baby. You're a child. You're a 5-year-old. Yes, you go to school, you go to the bathroom by yourself, or you feed yourself, but you don't get the food. You don't get the toilet paper. You don't pay the bills. You don't keep the roof over your head. You just know that you're taken care of. And that's part of the childlike faith. And also I think that exuberance that anything's possible, that you just, and that's why they're always falling down and putting things in their mouths and making bad mistakes. You're like, no, I don't think you should put your finger in that plug. You're like, but this would be so fun,
Exactly.
But it's that unbridled curiosity and just go for it.
Yeah. We have wide open spaces available to us.
Exactly.
Wide open.
And I think another part of my thinking in sassy for this, again, my definition is always this unapologetic, confident person. And when I say that, I'm not thinking about a woman in a business suit with heels. I am thinking about this little me who's running through a field of grass in my bare feet, full speed, laughing my butt off because I am free and I am loving it. My little legs are going as fast as they can. And I'm just like, woo, this is awesome, And I think that so many of us lose touch with that. And that's where we get caught in the grind.
Yes, exactly. All of that.
Yeah. But I'm like you, I have with my husband coaching baseball, most of the people that he coaches are under 30. And some of them are even as young as 20, but many of them, we have a baby boom on our team this year. Like people have little kids that are 2 and under and having second babies. And I sit there in the family room after the games or when I sit with them in the stands, and I'm just wide-eyed at like exactly what you're talking about with your youngest daughter. Just like, I sit there and just smile because it's just so fun to watch them experience life through their little selves, And I think that's magical.
It is
magical.
It is.
I'm enough of the age. My husband is going to be 55 and I'll be 53. And so we're
girl. Never would have guessed that one.
Well, thank you. So our kids are 29 and 25. So while there's no kids in our imminent future, grandkids in our imminent future, like that's kind of coming on the horizon for us. So I'm really, from that standpoint, looking forward to it. Whenever it happens, boys.
Yeah, whenever. No rush.
No rush.
Right.
No rush, please. No rush. Do it when you're ready. But hey there, it's Annie. Just popping by in the middle of this episode to ask you a couple quick questions. Have you been feeling stuck? Are you asking yourself, how did I end up here in my life? When did I lose control? I don't know if you know my story, but I've been through plenty of challenges of my own, and I found my way back. But it wasn't without a struggle. And now I want to help you find a way back too. And I want it to be easier and faster than my own experience. So what I'd like to do is to offer you a free strategy session. All you need to do is go to www.boldbravesassshow.com and click on the strategy session link that's right below the heading of that page. You'll see a little opt-in box. In that 30-minute session, I promise I can help you find some clarity through the challenges so that you can start to live more of the unapologetically confident life that God designed for you. I hope you'll take advantage of this super special offer. There's only a few spots and they're really going fast. Take care. Now back to the show. It's so awesome, this idea. So this grace over grind. So what would you say to the person who is like nodding their head right now and thinking, that's a really good idea on paper, but I don't know if I can do it, if I can get there. And I know you've shared the practice, walk it out in little ways, but let's say they're a little bit, that person may not have known how, but this person I'm talking about has like some resistance or fear, or the enemy's working on their old stories, right?
Yes.
How would you encourage them?
It's so funny. I have a friend who will say, but did you die? I'll be like, no. I would just look straight up, but did you die? It's like one of the things that I do when I was feeling, fear about something, I would just sit back and think like, what am I really scared of? Like, no, seriously, like, what is the worst? People are always like, why are you thinking about the worst? No, seriously, I had to think, what is the worst thing that could happen here? And honestly, if even did you die was the worst thing that happened to me, I'm with Jesus. So really, what in the world do I have to fear? Like, there's just there's not. So that's the type of thing I'd go through. It's like, so if I'm feeling like, oh gosh, I don't know if I want to, release this one to him. I think I've got this one. I'd start thinking, okay, what if, like, I really feel God's put this part on my heart to do. I don't exactly know how that's going to get done. I don't know how it's going to get paid for. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. I'm scared. What do I do with that? I'm like, okay, what's the worst that happens if I take some steps towards that? What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
I might upset some people. Okay. Maybe I'll lose some money. Maybe I'll lose a little money.
Right.
Okay. I've lost money before. What? I've lost tens of thousands of dollars before. Okay. What? Okay. I'll go through this list, and the list is just really just not that upsetting. It's just, I don't have to do, those are the types of things that I used to do to start taking the steps. But then once I realized that I was just taking the steps, and then I started to have confidence that, wow, no, I am being led by God. Once I had the confidence, I don't have to go back there anymore. Okay. But that's how I would start. It's just like my friend was like, did you die? And I'd be like, well, even if I did, I'd be with Jesus. So, It's okay. But usually the person would say that is because really you're not going to die. Usually the things that were the worst case scenarios are really just not that bad. They're just not that bad. I'll give you an example. There was, so I mentor a lot of folks, right? And so there will be somebody who's like, they're scared to write a book. I'm like, what's the worst thing that happens if you write the book? Like, okay, so let's say you wasted a ton of time writing this book. Nobody ever reads it. That's the worst. That's actually the worst thing that can happen, is that you spent some hours writing it and nobody reads it.
Right?
Right. So it's always kind of like, there's really no worse. There's nothing else that's as bad as it gets. So if you feel the Lord put the book on your heart, then doggone it, start writing it.
Exactly. I would even say that with this podcast. I had an idea to do this for a lot of years, and it just kept not being time. And then I was challenged in a class that I was taking to really, what we talked about this before we started. I felt like God was saying I had a specific mission. He said, what are you committed to? I said, I'm committed to these people in this situation. And he said, well, what do you have to be? What kind of person do you have to be?
Yes.
In order to do that? And I was like, I need to be bold. I need to be brave. And I need to just be myself and stop worrying about what other people think. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because I remember when my husband used to play baseball, when he was a player, and we had a young family, and we were, living in a new town where he was playing from, and he would travel. And I would sometimes get in that mindset of like, oh my gosh, what if the plane goes down? Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh. And I did the exact same thing that you did. I imagined like the worst thing that happened to him was obviously the plane went down, and then he was gone. And then I had to do and then I had to go figure out how to live my life. And it was like, I walked through the steps and I was like, I think it's terrible, but I would live. Like it's terrible, but I could see there's a path, and that I think that we'd be okay. And so it literally never, ever, ever, ever crossed my mind, and because it never crossed my mind, I could never be afraid of it again. So I think that a lot of people make this boogeyman in the corner of thing we're afraid of. And especially in this age of social media, like, I got news for you. Girls, guys out there, you think that people care what you're posting and doing? No, they care if you see what they're doing. right? That's
Right.
all that
Like
matters.
disappear for a week and see if anyone asks, why were,
No
where's
one
your
cares.
latest Facebook post? Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And that sounds so callous and so maybe unloving, but the truth is that's human nature. We're not,
Right.
we're not doing it because we're necessarily like, I like to post things that are inspirational or get people
Yes.
moving or whatever. But sometimes I post things about wonderful things I think I did that I'm excited about. And
Sure.
people like it, but it's not the center of their universe. I know that. So why would we give so much power to what someone else's opinion? It's taken me a long time to do that. I just don't care. I don't care in the sense that it's like, you can believe or think whatever you want to think. And I respect that. And you do that for me and we're all good.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, and fears come from so many different things. Sometimes it's fear of messing up. And sometimes it's fear of what other people think, or it's fear, it's fear of so many things. But if you really feel in your heart that God's called you to something, then really the other stuff, it's just.
I always think of it too, of like walking on water. All the stuff that scares you is underneath the water.
That's
if
it.
you got your eyes focused, you're walking above it, on top of it. It can't get you. But as soon as you take your eyes off, you might be getting wet.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So, I mean, it's one of those things. Those are the strategies of the ones who are just like, I don't know yet, but I promise you, the more you do it, if you just take the risk, right? Take the risk of doing it. And then you'll start to realize more and more that this actually isn't that risky. Risky is me trying to figure this stuff all out on my own. Not risky is doing something with God, following the leading of the Holy Spirit. That's not risky. But we feel like we're taking a risk. So I always use the language of you're taking the risk, right? Because it feels like a risk to us. So take the risk, because really, seriously, what is the worst thing that could happen?
I love it. Shae, you are amazing. You are amazing. Your wisdom is just oozing out of you. Like, I don't know what, like honey from a honeycomb. I don't
oozing
know.
like honey.
Oozing like honey. This is great. We could, again, I'm sure people who listen to multiple episodes will say, you say this all the time, Annie. I know, but I have such amazing people on my show that I feel like I could make a 3-hour Joe Rogan show where we could just get into so many topics and tackle them. But I do
riff for 3 hours.
Right? Let's just go, Shae. Let's get a sandwich and have hang out. Stop for a little while, like crazy. We probably could. And I have so appreciated you bringing what you know, what you've learned, your experiences. Your stories are amazing. And I know that people who are listening are going to get something from it. And it's cool because there's so much here that they're going to get a couple somethings or different somethings. And I just know, God's hand is at work in this and it's awesome. So I just really want to take the time to thank you for being here. It's been such a treat, such a blast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Such a joy. So this is Annie Berryhill with the Bold, Brave, and Sassy Show. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And I hope that you will continue to subscribe and review and let me know who you'd like me to interview and talk to, what topics you'd like me to tackle, and just keep coming back. And I hope that you're encouraged and blessed, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much.